What's up, Apple Core? How you guys doing, man? Today I'm going to walk you through a control deck tutorial. I'm going to guide you through the construction process, the idea behind the control deck, what your goal is, like what you're trying to accomplish, and how you can go about accomplishing it. Yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into it, man. Let's also go ahead and set it to full screen too, so we can get the resolution right. So it should be good to go now. So anyways, as far as control decks go, one of the best, most popular control deck styles is with Warrior. They have some of the best early game removal spells in the game. Warrior and Warlock, I would say, are the two most popular. But you know what? Let's deviate from that. Let's make a control deck with a Rogue. This is not very common. This is kind of rare. Either way, I will give you the basis for the underlying ideology behind a control deck and kind of what cards to craft or what cards to select when you're going through this process. The first thing you want to do with a control deck is get all of your early game removal spells. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pick up the Backstab, the Deadly Poisons. We can throw in some golden ones, so we will. We're going to want to go with the other removal spells like Blade Flurry. It's so good when you have Blade Flurry. Also, pro tip, whenever you use Deadly Poison on your weapon, make sure you attack first with a fresh weapon that has Deadly Poison, and then use Blade Flurry afterwards, so you can deal effectively 6 damage to either one target or to the enemy hero, in the same turn with Blade Flurry. Also, we will include 1 Betrayal, since we're making this kind of strange spell-based, control rogue deck. We will include the Eviscerate, of course. Since we can't have 2 gold, we'll do 2 regular, just so we condense the deck size a little bit. With control decks in general, 1 or 2 damage mechanics are extremely important. So using things like Perdition's Blade, I would actually highly recommend it. So we're actually going to throw in double Perdition's Blade too, believe it or not. It also synergizes really well with Blade Flurry. Having that 1 extra damage for the AoE clear is really crucial against aggro decks like Warlock, or any aggro deck in general that plays minions with 2 or less health. Not sure why I threw out Warlock there specifically, but yeah. That 1 damage is really crucial. Anyways, besides that, let's see. We will throw in 1 sap. We're not going to throw in the shivs just yet. We're going to throw in 1 fan of knives. And I think that should do it for our early game removal. That should do it. So we have our early game removal spells established. Now, something to keep in mind when building a control deck is your goal here is to win the late game. Alright, so your goal is to live long enough to play the creatures you want, to play really powerful creatures that allow you to win the game late. And it's a different play style, and it's sometimes more fun. That's why people prefer it. So what we're going to do is establish that late game now. Now that we have the early game removal spells covered, we're going to go for the late game creatures and what we are going to use to kill our opponent. So yeah, let's just immediately click 7+ on the filter and go to the neutral. So let's see, like what big creatures do we want? What is going to synergize well with our hero, number 1, the spells we have, number 2, and the goal we are trying to accomplish, which is building a control deck, and how are we going to kill our opponent with these late game creatures, based on all of these synergies that we have. So in a control deck, if we throw in something like Gadgetzan Auctioneer, we can go with a Mountain Giant potentially. We could end up comboing a lot of things in the late game, drawing a ton of cards, and being able to play Mountain Giant for almost free. And generally speaking, in a control deck, you have a ton of card draw mechanics, which allows you to play things like Mountain Giant that cost 1 less for every other card in your hand. So you know what? We are going to throw in 1 Mountain Giant, believe it or not, in a rogue deck. I know, it's madness. And I think it's actually pretty good. Just 1, though. Just 1. We're going to throw in Alexstrasza. Alexstrasza is one of the most crucial components to a control deck. She is so crucial because control decks need to live long enough to win the late game. And part of living long enough is being able to heal yourself for potentially 14 health if you ever get down to 1 life. Control decks, generally, you dip very low in health before you are able to play the creatures you need to take back board control. So as long as you live until turn 9, then you can throw Alexstrasza out there on the table, heal yourself back up to 15, and then if you can activate her with a taunt, or heal yourself again the following turn, you can come back and you can win the game. So we will throw in Alexstrasza right now. Let's see here. Also, control decks, I would say Ragnaros is one of my favorite legendaries of all time. Essentially an 8 mana, 8/8 with charge, and he does not take any damage when he deals it. If you clear the board properly, you can always take a 50-50 roll of whether you're going to hit the creature you want or hit the hero. If you can clear the board properly, if you do get board control, which is pretty common to have board control as a rogue, and especially playing a control deck. So yeah, we will throw in Ragnaros as well. Ysera is worth considering. She's a pretty good card, but she's too slow. I think in a control deck like this, especially as a rogue where you're using your weapon to hit creatures, excuse me, you end up taking a lot of damage very quickly, and playing Ysera on turn 9 it doesn't really do anything for you, if that makes sense. You can't play anything else with her because there are no one-drop creatures that give her taunt. If it doesn't heal us, like Alexstrasza, we want something that costs 8 or less that we can play with Sun Fury Protector. This card right here, let's bring her up. Sun Fury Protector, give adjacent minions taunt. So that basically, when you have 10 mana, you know, in the end game, when you do reach late game and you have 10 mana crystals, or mana crystals, however you want to pronounce it, you can play an 8-cost creature with a 2-cost creature, like Sun Fury, or very specifically with Sun Fury to give it taunt. So we're going to throw in 2 Sun Furies right now as well. Also, let's see here. One of the best control creatures in the game, in my opinion, is actually Wild Pyromancer, especially when you have as many spells as a rogue. You know, Backstab, Deadly Poison, Betrayal, Blade Flurry. If you pull off a Blade Flurry or a Fan of Knives with a Wild Pyro for essentially 2 to 6 damage, if you have Deadly Poison, you know, and Perdition's Blade up and running, it can be completely devastating to your opponent. If you do pull it off, there's almost no way for anyone to deal with it, even though it is rare. I think for now, we're going to throw in 1 Wild Pyromancer, just 1. We want to make sure we establish the other key components of our deck first before we go down that road. Speaking of taunt activation, excuse me, let's think about how we're going to survive long enough to play these creatures before we add in some more late game as well. One of the ways we're going to survive is with Ancient Watcher in a control deck. Even though it can't attack, it's still a 2-mana 4/5, and since we're running 2 Sun Fury Protectors, we can basically throw out Ancient Watcher anytime and give it taunt, which means they have to kill this creature to get through and hit our face. And if they silence it to get through the taunt, then they silence this effect right here, and then the Ancient Watcher can then be used to attack. And you just gained yourself a 4/5 on the board for only 2 mana. So we're going to throw in 2 Ancient Watchers. Now here's the problem. Okay, here's the dilemma. We still need card draw mechanics. We still need a little bit more late game to kill them. These 3 guys are not enough in a 30-card deck. You know, having a 10% chance to draw these guys from the beginning of the game. Generally speaking, you're going to have drawn about half your deck. So we're looking at maybe anywhere from 5 to 8% to draw these cards in the mid to late game. These 3 cards right here. You want to have at least 5 to 6 heavy, unstoppable late game cards that you're going to be able to throw the tides in your favor. But anyways, card draw mechanics first. That's always what you want to establish. We do already have 1 card draw mechanic with Fan of Knives. In a control deck with this many spells, we want to include 2 Gadgetzan Auctioneers. We're not going to use the gold one since we can condense the list a little bit. We'll use 2 of the same color, so golden versus regular. 2 Gadgetzan Auctioneers. With this many spells, we have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spells, 11 spells. So potentially, and even if we combo something like Fan of Knives with Gadgetzan Auctioneer, that would draw us 2 cards in 1 turn. So it's extremely powerful, extremely valuable, and yeah, Gadgetzan Auctioneer, that's pretty much it. The synergy is insane with the spells. There's not really much else to say on that note. In terms of other card draw mechanics, I generally, like I was saying in my previous video, I like to have anywhere from 4 to 6, generally speaking. In a control deck, you don't need quite as many card draw mechanics as you do in the aggro deck, but you know, in my opinion, the more the better. That's what I always like to say. And you know what? Blood Mage Thalnos in a rogue deck is so insanely good. The Death Rattle draw a card and also spell damage +1. I know this is really heavy on the legendaries, and I will be making another video soon for what cards you can use to replace instead of the legendary cards. But either way, this video is just to give you a general idea of how to go about crafting your own, you know, control deck. So even without, even though Blood Mage Thalnos is really irreplaceable, there's nothing that can really fill his shoes. Think about it in terms of card draw mechanics. So look for something else that draws you a card that costs 2 mana, like a Loot Hoarder or a Novice Engineer, and replace that with Blood Mage Thalnos instead. So we've added Blood Mage Thalnos, one of the most powerful 2-drops in the game, for the spell power that synergizes with all of these spells and solves a card draw mechanic problem as well. So we currently have 4 card draw mechanics. With a Mountain Giant, I really want to add in more. And one of the crucial components to a rogue deck is the Azure Drake right here. Card draw mechanic and also spell damage +1. The spell damage, again, with all of the early game removal spells, is so insanely good. And in most control decks, actually, in any control deck, I think Azure Drake is a key fundamental part of it. Because remember the idea behind control decks is that you want to basically live long enough and draw enough cards and use your early game removal spells to keep the board clear until you can play your big creatures. And spell damage synergizes well because you have so many early game removal spells. That's why I really emphasize spells there. I think I did a great job, right? But yeah, so it solves a card draw mechanic problem. It also gives us spell power. It's just really well-rounded, all around good to put a 4/4 on the board as well. Yeah, so that's good stuff. That should solve that problem. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 card draw mechanics. I think that should be good for the most part. We have 4 slots left. We need to figure out how not to die and what our late game is going to be to crush them for the control deck. So let's go ahead and look at our 6 drops here. There's a few options we have. Karen Bloodhoof is definitely one of them. In fact, Karen Bloodhoof is definitely one of them. We're going to go ahead and throw in Karen. The Harvest Golem on crack cocaine. When he dies, he spawns another 4/5, basically himself all over again. He just changes his portrait, he goes in the back, puts on some new makeup, comes back out, and he's good to go again. Yeah, Karen Bloodhoof is just absolutely insane, the value you get from this guy, especially since things like Tinkmaster no longer can be played directly to target him. Tinkmaster has been nerfed, so it's a random effect, and I'll be making a new video on the card draw, or sorry, on the patch notes as well, and the changes and what I think about them in the future. But anyways, Karen Bloodhoof is even more powerful now after the patch, in my opinion. So yeah, we threw in Karen Bloodhoof. And so now, I know this is looking really legendary heavy. If you don't have Karen Bloodhoof, I would highly recommend Boulder Fist Ogre, not Blood Fist. You can't even see if he has Bloody Fists. Boulder Fist Ogre is an excellent replacement for Karen. You can also drop him on turn 6. He's really hard to deal with. 7 health, is extremely durable. Also, he's been seen in something like Trump's free-to-play mage deck. Trump SC, I think, is on YouTube. He makes excellent videos as well if you haven't heard of him. Anyways, yes, Argent Commander is excellent in control decks and aggro decks alike. He basically helps you get board control. If you're ever falling behind in a control deck, Argent Commander is a great segue to get you there. As long as you live till turn 6, then you can at least kill 1 creature on that turn. You can guarantee you kill 1 creature and put something on the board. So yeah, we will throw in 1 Argent Commander. So now the only problem is, it looks like we're having a little bit of 2-drop spiking going on, which means if we don't draw any of our early game removal, let's say we only draw, this is tough. If you only draw your heavy cards, you're in a lot of trouble. You will lose the game if you only draw heavy cards. And generally speaking, I like to have I like to have some 1-drops in a control deck. Well, only one type of drop, which is Argent Squire. I really do like Argent Squire in control decks. The only problem is I think we need more taunt activation with Defender of Argus right here. We can throw in the golden one as well, since we're only throwing in one defender anyways. But yeah, Defender of Argus, give adjacent minions +1/+1 and taunt, similar to the Sun Fury. It synergizes really well with the 2 Ancient Watchers we have already. Yeah, we will put in one Defender of Argus for taunt activation to try and help keep us alive. As far as the 2-drop spiking goes, though, how are we going to solve this? So now look at what I'm doing here and see how I'm thinking out loud, and use this when you're constructing your own control deck. And also you can play games, play a few games with your deck, try it out, feel out the process. But anyways, let's see here. We can remove potentially... I mean, I know the mountain. I really want to keep the Mountain Giant. I think that's what keeps this deck novel. It synergizes so well with all the card draw mechanics we have, and generally speaking, as a any control deck, you should have a huge card advantage, which means you have a lot of cards sitting in your hand. So generally speaking, we're going to play the Mountain Giant on either turn 5 or 6, probably. We might throw in one Argent Squire. It's between an Argent Squire, a Harvest Golem, or another Defender of Argus. The reason being the Harvest Golem is guaranteed value. It's guaranteed to stay on the board for an extra turn so that we can combo it with Sun Fury or Defender if we are really desperate and we're just trying to live one more turn so that we can guarantee something stays out there so we can give it taunt next turn. This is a really, really difficult decision. I think we're actually going to go with... Alright, I know how we're going to solve this. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to throw in the Harvest Golem for now. And here's the thought process I want you guys to use. Is when you're in a tough decision like this on what your last card or what your last few cards are going to be, just make a decision and then think about it in terms of who your opponent is. Similar to what I said in the previous video. If you're playing a lot of aggro decks like Hunters, aggro Mages, things like that, go ahead and throw in Argent Squire instead of Harvest Golem. If you're playing a lot of control decks, you know, if you're facing mirror matchups with control decks, I would highly recommend placing another Defender of Argus instead. That way you'll have more room to buff your late game heavy creatures, and you're not going to be worried about playing something on turn 3 because you really don't care. Because control decks generally don't play anything in the first few turns anyways. You're basically sitting with a hand that looks like this and maybe some spells for removal. It's very rare you have the perfect creature curve with a control deck. Yeah, and that pretty much does it. So we have our taunt activation with the Sun Furies and one Argus. We have excellent removal utility with Wild Pyro, double Perdition's Blade, one Sap, the Eviscerates, Blade Flurry, Betrayal, Deadly Poison, Backstab, and you can see our mana curve as well. Let's see here. Let's also go out of full screen quickly. Yeah, and let's remove that little menu. Here we go. Pro production value, as always, man. Here we go. Yes, there we go. And yeah, so there is the deck list. You guys can take a look at that. You can pause it. If you don't have the legendaries, let me go down the list really quick. For Blood Mage Thalnos, I would actually recommend replacing him with a Loot Hoarder instead of a Novice Engineer. I would go with Loot Hoarder if you don't have Blood Mage Thalnos. If you don't have Karen Bloodhoof, replace him with a Boulder Fist Ogre. If you don't have Ragnaros, I would probably add in a second Argent Commander. And if you don't have Alexstrasza, that's a tough one. I guess you can put in a second Boulder Fist Ogre. I would probably say that's your best bet. As far as the epics go, if you don't want to play the Mountain Giant, you could always play something like... Or let's say you don't have a Mountain Giant. Let's say you don't have that epic. I would put in another Defender of Argus. Yeah, you could drop the Mountain Giant, put in a second Defender. You could drop Alexstrasza, put in a Boulder Fist Ogre, and you can drop Ragnaros, and you can put in a second Argent Commander. And yeah, Loot Hoarder for Blood Mage Thalnos. So hopefully that helped you guys get behind my ideology and get inside my head as far as crafting a control deck. Hopefully this will help you in crafting your own control deck. And yeah, don't forget, by the way, once we reach 5,000 subscribers, I will be doing a Hearthstone in real life video. I will be going out onto the streets of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we will do another video where you guys vote in the comments below on what character you want to see me dress up as and go out in real life and like prank people as this character. It's going to be good, man. So make sure you share with everyone. Every share helps. Tell your friends, post on your Facebook, all that good stuff, man. I would greatly appreciate it. And look forward to doing that in the near future as well. And once again, thank you guys for watching, man. I appreciate it so much, and hopefully you'll like this video and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Yeah, and I think that about covers it for today. So yeah, thank you guys for watching again, Apple Core, and I will see you guys soon. Oh yeah, check out my Apple Vlogs channel if you want to come with me on my road trip to Los Angeles. I'm leaving tonight/tomorrow, so hopefully you guys will subscribe over there on Apple Vlogs, and yeah, I'll take you on vacation with me, man. I'm looking forward to it. Anyways, once again, peace out, Apple Core. I was doing like the Obama pointing finger, but yeah, see you guys later, man, and thanks for watching once again.